Okay, so as you can see, I'm back in the old house. I have moved again, and there's a lot to discuss. So, in the last few days, global sport has been absolutely hammered by the coronavirus. Now, multiple sports leagues across the world have shut down, suspended operations, cancelled the rest of seasons. Lots to talk about. We know from the NBA and the NHL the earliest they are aiming to get back, as it seems, is June. It's a lengthy layoff. It's more than just a couple of weeks. It's a long layoff. The Premier League has obviously, and the EPL here in the UK, and the Football League here in the UK has suspended league operations. Now, the National League, which is the non-league, are continuing. Also, leagues that are continuing in operation are the NRL in Australia and the Super League here in the UK and Europe, which is rugby league, which is really, really surprising considering that the Melbourne Grand Prix in the F1 has been cancelled and a McLaren member has tested positive for the virus. And this is what I find really, really weird, really strange, really odd, is that the NRL, which has a team in Melbourne, are continuing to play games. The Super League, again, continuing to play games. Now, these are two leagues that are more reliant on the gate receipts than, let's say, global football, the NHL, NBA. They're very reliant on gate receipts and merchandise purchases. So fans going to grounds, buying a jersey, buying a program, buying a scarf, that kind of thing, buying the ticket on the gate. But they have to follow suit, surely. It cannot be long before the Super League is shut down. It cannot be long before the NRL is shut down. I know their seasons are in their early days and their early rounds, but it cannot be long. I'm really surprised that the AFL hasn't released a statement saying it's delaying the start of the season, which is, again, Australian-based league. We know that global tennis, the ATP and WTA tours have shut down for 6 weeks. It's going to be at least June before any sport resumes. I can tell you that. It is. I wouldn't say it's hell necessarily because broadcasters are looking at showing highlight reels and classic matches from the past. It is frustrating, but at the same time, they should have done this in January. They should have done this when the first case was reported outside of China. Governments and sporting bodies around the world should have shut down things 3 months ago. They are behind the ball. They're being reactionary. They're not being proactive. And while the NHL and NBA are looking at arena availability to either complete seasons or just go straight to playoffs, it's one of those things where they should have been proactive. Yes, Jason, I know it's your jersey that you gave me. Thank you very much. Has my holiday been approved this time? I need the 30th. That's all I need to know. I think the way it's been handled by various sports leagues has been a bit ad hoc, and this is the problem. And yes, some minor sports like badminton, they were playing their tour matches on the UK section of the World Tour over the weekend. We know British basketball has been played. We know that the second tier of British ice hockey is still going ahead with its season, although the Elite League is shut down, and so that's the season done. No playoffs this year. So various leagues are doing things differently, but there's no global sporting shutdown in a sense that every global governing body said, "Right, we're shutting down." It's up to the league or sports discretion, and this is where there's been no communication. I think the NBA has led the way in North America when a player tested positive, and after that they fell like dominoes within hours. And because the NBA and NHL share arenas, that's sped up that process. But from what I've seen reported on North American media, the earliest we're looking at is 10 weeks. That's May, June time when the NHL and NBA are going to resume, and I think they'll go straight to the playoffs, if at all. They could just write off the playoffs this year altogether, and that will affect the salary caps going forward for the following seasons. Leagues like the CFL are heavily reliant on gate receipts. They're going to be massively impacted. They don't have as big a TV deal as the NHL in Canada, for example. Major League Rugby, it's a new league. It's smaller stadiums, again heavily reliant on gate revenue. Yes, it's got a decent TV deal. They're going to be massively impacted. Um, I think I don't think the World Championships will happen in Switzerland either. Are they? They've already shut down the Women's World Championships in Canada. If they go ahead, I'll be really surprised. I think the Euro 2020, if they put them on in December, that will massively affect football seasons. It looks highly likely two options. One, they don't have it at all, or they host it next summer instead when the Confederations Cup is meant to be on. So they might not have the Confederations Cup next year and replace that with the Euros, the Copa America, and the Gold Cup and things like that. I think what we're seeing is not unprecedented, but it hasn't been seen in our lifetimes. The last time global sport was disaffected was 1919, 1920 with the Spanish flu, when it last had the impact it's had on sport. I cannot see how any sports league can start again by the end of April, or beginning of April at the earliest. I think that's highly um, optimistic. I do think some leagues will have a shortened season. I think other leagues may just call it a day, and then other ramifications, legal and financial, will have to be resolved. But I'm surprised the Super League is carrying on, even though matches have been called off. They're thinking about punishing Leeds Rhinos for not playing the game against Catalan. I think that's the wrong way to look at it. On the Euro side of things, there are two options. They either cancel completely, because the fact it's not been played in a host country, it's been played across the continent. I cannot see that working logistically anyway. That's my personal opinion. The F1 season, May's an optimistic start. I think the European season might be pushed back a bit further. I think we're looking at June. We are looking at June. Um, Possibly July at the earliest. I don't know about the British touring cars, which is a big thing. I'm a bit sporting event that I'm really into is my British touring cars. I can't see how they can start the season over the Easter weekend. I cannot see that happening. Grand National's another one, which is in doubt. I mean, horse racing is heavily reliant on gate receipts as well, and to have horse racing in front of empty grandstands, and there are those who are obviously not big fans of horse racing for the animal rights side of things, and dog and greyhound racing, they're heavily reliant on gate receipts and tickets sold. So they're going to be heavily hammered, and a lot of racetracks might go out of business. Plain and simple. I think the EIHL shutting down, I think, was the right thing. The fact the National League in this country hasn't done that really surprises me, considering that a lot of players are semi-pros. They have a secondary job outside of hockey. I mean, my mum's having an extension built in our house. One of the builders plays for the Battle Bees. So if he tests positive because of another player testing positive, he's not out of work for hockey, but his building job as well. And that's something that needs to be considered. The T20 World Cup. Well, the women's T20 went ahead in Australia, uh, a few days ago, and the final was played. Will it go ahead? I mean, at the moment, I can't see it not going ahead, but that's too far in the future. I think at the moment, the earliest professional sport can get back to normality of any kind is June. That's from the reports that I'm reading coming out of the US, and coming out of government reports saying, look, we will get back to some normality in the summer. They're trying to slow down the virus spread if they can. Otherwise, we end up in a lockdown situation like Italy and China and Spain, which I don't think anyone wants. But it's looking more and more likely, and it's a difficult situation to. It's so the situation is entirely in flux. I mean, the fact that European football is in such a mess, I think, I don't know what's going to happen with the TV deals and those fans who've paid for TV subscriptions. Will they get refunded because the matches aren't being shown? That's something, again, the commercial side of things with all this shutdown. It's going to impact more leagues than people think financially, especially lower leagues at lower levels, and minority sports are going to be more heavily impacted than football and rugby union. I think rugby league is being very, very brave, possibly foolhardy in continuing with its league seasons, both in the Northern Hemisphere and in Australia and New Zealand, but they are more heavily reliant on gate receipts and fan memberships and merchandise sales than, let's say, the Premier League here in or the Serie A or La Liga. I did not see the Challenge Cup game between the Devils and the Steelers, but now that the EIHL has shut down operations for the season, and basically said the season's done, I cannot see the EIHL having playoffs, and the National League still forging ahead with its schedule, even though the Senior League and the Elite League is shut down. Really surprises me. We'll have to see what happens. I've been following the updates on social media. Rugby league, the NRL and Super League play matches from Thursday through to Sunday, and sometimes on a Monday night. The NRL, I think, when Cameron Smith's coming out and saying it should be postponed, Melbourne has got positive cases, Sydney's got positive cases. I'm really surprised the NRL has gone through with the first round of fixtures, but at the same time, a good website if you want to watch the NRL is watchnrl.com. For those outside Australia and New Zealand, it's 120 quid a year. You can watch everything uninterrupted, no ads. You can stream matches. You can catch up with full matches. That's how I would get hold of my rugby league coverage. The Super League is further into the season, and they're following current government advice where mass gatherings are still allowed. But I find it really weird that every other major professional league in the UK is shut down, yet they're still going. The Pro League, the English Premiership, when it comes to rugby union, they've shut down. Oh, the Gallagher Premiership, sorry, they've shut down. I'm just finding it really weird, but the knock-on effects are there. Oh, sorry about that bang. That's my family making noise. But the knock-on effects are there. Financially, it's going to impact a lot of the lower league teams and those teams on smaller budgets. The Super League is being very, very brave in keeping the league going. And the NRL, I think, are being foolhardy. The AFL, their season starts a little bit later, a few weeks later. So the AFL season is not going to start for another couple of weeks. But if the AFL go ahead, I'll be really surprised. Leeds Catalans, I think that's the wrong way. Gotta have some Pringles. I think Leeds Catalan, that's the RFL making a really silly decision there. That's the wrong decision to make. I think Leeds Catalan and Toronto have also sent players home and training staff home who have tested positive or been tested for it, showing symptoms. Punishing the teams is not the right way. I think, I wouldn't say the AFL shouldn't go ahead at all. I think they need to look at what's happening in Australia and around the world. And yeah, they have reduced rounds, but I think they should just have half the amount of fixtures, so no away fixtures. So in the sense that instead of playing each team twice, you play each team once, and home or away doesn't matter. Or go to neutral venues and just play it in a city that hasn't got coronavirus, such as Perth, for example, possibly could be an example. Play all the games there. Play all the games in Adelaide, for example. I think. Oh yeah, the FA Cup. Yeah, I mean Newcastle's having a good run in the FA Cup this season. That could also stall the takeover talks while this is going on. And now Rugby League has decided to suspend the league. They've got 5 rounds in. They should, thought about this a little bit. I mean, I'm surprised it's just come through because as of yesterday, when I was watching the news and they were giving statements, the head of the RFL was saying we're following government advice. We have no plans to suspend. We're going to go until I think the 3rd of April was very optimistic to come back. The reports coming out of the North American leagues, NHL and NBA, we're talking about June, 10 to 14 weeks. I find that really, really, really strange. The 100 format, which no one wants anyway, this could be a blessing, not having it. I can't see it going ahead either. I really can't. I'm sorry, but I'm hungry. I think the Tyson Fury situation where he could be banned for 8 years, we can discuss that later, but I think that the Super League going along as long as it did was foolhardy. The NRL has to look at what the Super League has now done, suspended, and do exactly the same. Reduce the length of the season. Play, instead of each team playing each other twice, play each other once. and start the season later. Forgo State of Origin this year. Forgo the summer tests, the Anzac Day test, for example. Just call that off this year, and focus on possibly when the epidemic has dropped down, having a second half of the season. It's a bit of a financial hit. It will affect the salary cap, but it's the logical way forward. I can't believe. I think, well, the NIHL. I was following this when the Elite League on Friday, when the Elite League suspended operations due to the outbreak. I went on the English Hockey Association website, and I read the press report they released in regards to the NIHL and the university competitions and the Women's League. And they were saying they were going to continue playing until the end of the season. There's only 4 games left for teams, or 4 games or less, and they were aiming for playoffs going to the Coventry. They're trying to sell tickets for the Coventry Magic weekend. I find it bizarre that on Friday morning, the NIHL, which is the junior second tier league, the National League were still planning to continue the season and finish the season and considering playoffs. Whereas the Elite League, the bigger league, the first tier, had said no, we're calling it a day. Yeah, I can do. I can definitely do sports history videos. I can do that all summer if I have to. It'll be depressing to have to do it all summer, but it's looking more and more likely. I now want to move on to Tyson Fury quickly, and we can also discuss WrestleMania. Good. Half price, buy one get one free. Brilliant deal. Tyson Fury, he obviously got his drugs ban a couple of years ago. This relates to that and how they falsified evidence. And he's looking at an 8-year ban if found guilty of evidence tampering over his previous suspension, which was served. And he's looking at basically his career done if he's found guilty. And from what's been leaked to the press and the interviews given, it's looking highly likely that Tyson Fury is done as a boxer. It's done. I don't think sport could be out of action for well over a year. I mean, my aunt lives in Italy. At the moment, the lockdown is till April the 3rd. But the earliest I think we can get back to some kind of normality is about 10 to 14 weeks. And that's the earliest. On the Tyson Fury situation, the last couple of days, it's come out that Tyson Fury's camp paid a farmer in Lancashire £25,000 to falsify some evidence over where meat products came from that were, or where certain things came from. Say he had contaminated meat, wild boar. Now you are allowed to hunt wild boar in this country, and you can also, boar you can also raise as a type of pig. And this dates back to his previous drugs ban. This doesn't date to now. Does beating wild. This predates that. He's clearly a clean athlete now. This dates back to when he was initially banned and served his 2-year doping ban. And it's to do with falsification of evidence and evidence tampering to try and get round a suspension. And it could lead to an 8-year ban, which is basically Tyson Fury done as a boxer. And I don't know how the boxing fan base will respond to that. It's been a great redemption story, but this taints it. If found guilty, he and his father, who's his trainer, will be banned for 8 years and possibly for life from the sport. So we'll have to see what happens. It's another sports story I can talk about, really. Crikey. Right, so I wouldn't say sport is history. I would just say it's on hold. But no, I can't see the Olympics going ahead, and I cannot see Euro 2020 going ahead this year. And I think Euro 2020 might be just cancelled altogether. Either they play it when the Federation Cup is going to be played next year, or they just call it a write-off. Because logistically, anyway, even if there wasn't the coronavirus going around, having it across Europe in multiple cities would have screwed fans anyway. Fans have been very negative about having it played across a whole continent. and UEFA very quickly said it will never happen again in that format. But I can't see Euro 2020 is going ahead. Rugby Union, that's done. Rugby League, I think sense has finally prevailed, but they should possibly, all these sports should possibly had a longer winter break shutdown in January. If they were doing this in January and government's doing this in January, bringing in these precautions, I think that could have avoided what we've now had. Oh, and Saracens will still be relegated. Absolutely. They should have had the Euros in one country. The fact that the semi-finals and finals have been played at Wembley, which is 3 games out alone, it was UEFA having the anniversary idea. 60 years since the first Euros in 1960. Anniversary, I get that, but it's a flawed idea anyway, and I can't see how it would have worked. Logistically, we've already seen with the issues with Azerbaijan and the Europa League final there, the price of tickets, the reaction from fans over the price of those tickets. Fan reaction to that decision when it was made was wholly negative, and UEFA very, very quickly went, well, it's the previous regime under Michel Platini. We're not going to do it again. We're very, very sorry. They were chasing the money, and the fan reaction was negative anyway, and now I can't see how it can go ahead in the current format they have in multiple countries, even next year, because the virus could come back for a second spell. I don't know. The Spanish flu was actually 1919, 1920. Now, the Hong Kong flu was 1968, 69. They were the 2 worst flu outbreaks in the last century. Spanish flu killed more people than World War One and possibly World War Two in the space of 6 months. Healthcare has improved massively in the last century since the Spanish flu outbreak of 1919, 1920. And looking at the amount of people who've been infected and who have recovered, let's not forget that, yes, the mortality rate has been quite scary, but normal flu kills hundreds of thousands of people a year, and no one in the media bats an eyelid. So I can't see why Mario Itoje can't go on loan for a year and play in France. It means he's not eligible for England, which is a shame. And I think Eddie Jones might have put some pressure on the RFU to also block that move. But at the moment, actually, at the back of everyone's mind until this current situation is resolved and brought under control. I personally think rugby players should be, like football players, able to play in whatever country they want and still be eligible for selection in Tier 1 nations. I think it's mad that England and New Zealand and Australia, with the Matt Getter in mind, still have this, this bizarre protectionist policy where you can only play in country of origin to be selected for your country. I think it's mad. I haven't seen any of the NRL matches yet. I'm finding it very, very bizarre that matches were going ahead at all, and they decided to start the season. Considering that, as I say, I'm going to repeat myself, that I've been moving this weekend. I actually moved this weekend from my flat back to my family house over 2 days, so I haven't really had the time to watch. Oh yeah, no, China. Their economy is heavily reliant on exporting cheap-made products. I think the NRL and Super League are going to be financially impacted massively with what's going on, and a lot of other leagues are going to be impacted massively as well. Ice hockey in this country, not so much because their seasons are nearly over, but for the Super League and the Rugby League in this country, lower league football in this country, cricket in this country, they're heavily reliant on gate receipts for their revenues. This is why the National League, I'm really surprised the non-league still going ahead with football and Sunday League still going ahead with football when professional leagues have shut down. I just find it absolutely bizarre. Yeah, munching away. But I think the NRL need to be very, very careful. We've seen how quickly it can go from fans allowed behind closed doors to not at all, and it takes a few days. Oh God, the Call of Duty! I haven't been on Call of Duty since the outbreak hit Europe. I I'm of the opinion that these measures that have been taken now should have been taken in the first week of January. The lockdown would have been shorter. Play would have probably resumed by now. The virus could have been more contained had the measures that have been brought in by Spain and Italy and China been brought in straight away. I'm a bit. Look. The bins we predominantly collect are plastic, although we do have metal bulk bins. But look, we have a dirty job. Not gonna lie. The coronavirus has been in this country now for a while. In the UK, as far as I know, we've got pretty good immune systems. Not gonna lie. Yeah. Look, I'm not gonna lie. One of my managers at work is self-isolating. He's showing symptoms of a flu-like virus. At the same time, we have to keep going. So I'm gonna be busy without sport, but yeah. Oh no. Once you've shown symptoms, you have to self-isolate. But I'm not sure how we're going to cope when X amount of members of staff are off. Well, talking about gambling, when the Cheltenham Festival was on last week, every YouTube video I watched, doesn't matter if it was sport related or some of the other channels I watched I do with metal detecting and history and things like that. Every channel, and video gaming, for example, the main channels I watch are to do with sport, video gaming, and urban archaeology, right? Bombarded with betting ads for the last month. It has been absolutely solid saturation when it comes to sports gambling on the internet, and I find it absolutely bizarre when I keep clicking the dislike icon, the thumbs down. I dislike this ad. I dislike this ad. I keep doing it, and a lot of the ads are very short and non-skippable, and it is really frustrating. Now, I have my concerns about the gambling industry in sports. I do. And yes, if horse racing gets shut down and greyhound racing gets shut down, those sports will suffer massively because they are heavily reliant on the gambling industry for a lot of their revenues. And they're also heavily run on ticket sales. So, in that regard, yes, I have my concerns that there will be the betting companies will be definitely targeting problem gamblers, and it is concerning. Look, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to the virus, just keep yourself clean. It's the same advice I'll give someone suffering from food poisoning or normal flu. Proper hygiene. It makes you wonder what people have been doing since the swine flu outbreak 10 years ago. It really does make you wonder what people have been doing. Oh yeah, no, the lower leagues, the non-league's still going. I have my concerns. I think. Look, it's a new strain of the virus, but personal hygiene is important. You should wash hands before preparing food. It's common logic. It's just really worrying to me how people have just been so lazy with their personal hygiene, and it's led to this. It's really basic common knowledge. It's worrying, but It looks like my sports history videos. Oh yes, my printers. Yep, absolutely. It looks like my sports history video playlist is going to be quite long. I'm going to have to look at some really influential teams and players and moments and favourite lineups, and I'm going to have to do a lot of thinking outside the box this summer. I don't know. We're looking at provisional dates for the shutdown to end. Provisional dates. At the same time, I can't see the Olympics going ahead, and I cannot see the Euro 2020 going ahead this year. Absolutely cannot. It does hit home. Absolutely, 100% agree. It does hit home about just basic self-care. A lot of people. I mean, I went to the bank today. I had to change all my addresses over. They've got hand sanitizers in the queue area. Like you press like a soap dispenser. I'm thinking, good God. My local pub, I went in there just to see some friends, and they've had to partially shut down half the pub because they haven't got the staff to come in because people are self-isolating or looking after relatives who are self-isolating. I think it does hit home. And this is why I'm really surprised the Super League has only just now decided to suspend the season. Really surprised. That also will affect the Challenge Cup as well. What do I think about the Sky and BT? Well, as an EE customer, which is part of the BT group, I am disgusted. I'm disgusted that they haven't refunded. Absolutely disgusted. Plus, their journalism's crap anyway. But if you paid for something and you can't get the service, you should get a refund. It's in your consumer rights. But at the end of the day, this is why the Super League trying to punish Leeds and Catalan for not playing that game. It's bizarre. It's because of the TV money. I think it's the wrong way to go. They should be going right there. We should be praising these clubs for being proactive. They've seen an issue. Players are self-isolating. They're going for testing. Okay, this game could be played at a later date. That's what I have to do. And yeah, I'll be looking at the History Channel and doing a few more bits and pieces. I've got some abandoned houses to look at with a mate who's a fellow YouTuber. I've got some bits and pieces to look at. I'll try and avoid like the Black Death and the coronavirus as much as possible because I'd rather focus on fun bits of history that aren't, so depressing. But it would be nice. I haven't posted a video on that channel for a while. It would be nice, but I would rather focus on everything on this channel, really. With my sports history, it means I can get some of my books out and bits and pieces. Oh yeah, no, if I couldn't go out and do my job, it'd be a lot worse because you would have an increase in urban foxes, rats, weasels. Although weasels are pretty good animals, though, because they eat the rats. But you would have an issue with vermin, public health, other illnesses that are spread, and yeah, we've been told to self-isolate for 7 days if we show symptoms, which I don't think is long enough, but we can't afford not to. Yeah, smallpox in the Americas and syphilis over here. Until Europeans and Native Americans first met, smallpox was a European disease, an Asiatic, and syphilis was, the STI was a North American disease, hadn't crossed over. And then it did. Oh, Mr. Huss, we have an NBA fan in the building. Now, the NBA is what's triggered a lot of this sporting shutdown domino effect over the last couple of days. Oh, I feel if Leeds and Catalan and Toronto, because Toronto have also sent players home, and I think Toronto really put the backs up the RFL to make a decision to suspend when players were and coaching staff were being tested for the virus. Leeds Catalan should not be punished for their actions. They made the right decision between them. when I think a Catalan player was showing symptoms of flu. It's still flu season. I think the RFL should not punish Leeds and Catalan for being proactive. The RFL and Super League have been behind the ball. Oh yeah, no, I know about that. A lot of live meat markets in Asia are like that. It's not just a China thing; it's across Asia. Um, the the issue is, it, Hudson Odoi recovered from the virus in like 2 days after this. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Hudson Odoi has recovered from being like really seriously ill, but he still has to stay in isolation for a good 14 to 24 days. Just because he's recovering doesn't mean he's fully immune or not still a carrier and still infectious. So he still has to look after himself. But I think the Premier League had no choice when three Leicester players went down. The Premier League should have suspended operations. The fact they carried on after that is wrong. For a few more days, they should have shut down sooner as well. Same. Oh, more people are telling me I haven't seen for a while. It's always good to see new returning viewers, and yeah, I mean, I don't do as many live streams and videos lately because of the living situation and having to move, and it's going to be a bit disruptive over the next couple of weeks until my internet's set up in the house. I mean, look, when it comes to English football, the fact the government hasn't shut down public gatherings has made it worse. And I'm surprised no elite league hockey players have tested positive, or rugby players, be it league or union. And I think that the measures are reactionary and they're too late. They should have extended the winter break and shut down the leagues for 4 weeks in January, February time, not now. And I honestly think that the measures now that have been brought in across the globe are very reactionary and too little too late to for sport especially, but socially as well. I mean, Italy, the earliest Serie A can start play again is April 3rd, April 4th, at the earliest, and they could extend the quarantine period. I've got family in Italy, and they could extend the quarantine period. And absolutely, the repercussions for China will be bad, and they're hosting the Winter Olympics in 2 years' time, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Oh no, I mean, in any industry where you have, um, multiple contacts within, let's say, the haulage industry or the food industry, think of it like foot and mouth disease. Think of it like BSE. If it's an isolated outbreak of an illness in livestock, it affects the region that it happens. But when it goes global or national, it then shuts down a whole industry. When sports stars in multiple different sports are coming down, like the NBA and NHL, they share arenas. There's cross contamination, if you know what I mean. The NBA really started the domino effect of international sport. I mean, Serie A, we had a couple of players. Hanover had a player, the German second tier. But when the NBA had a player test positive with the Utah Jazz, the NHL within 24 hours were like, no, we're not just going to play games behind closed doors. We're going to shut down the whole thing. And within 48 hours, all North American sport was on shutdown. I think NASCAR is still going, but they can get away with having it with no fans as long as the paddock is isolated, and that means staying away from their families and friends. Good question. I'm not getting into conspiracy theories about why they're from China. I have a pretty good rough idea, but I'm not going to get into conspiracy theories. At the moment, as things stand in the NHL, as things stand, the Oilers Flames will be a first round matchup in the playoffs. And I think the NHL will go, right, we'll go by regulation wins as a tiebreaker. We're not going to play the rest of the season. We are going to go straight to playoffs. And the Flames Oilers, as it currently stands, would be a first round matchup in the NHL playoffs in the Western Conference. The Battle of Alberta means something again. Now, for my long-time subscribers, I'm a Jets fan. We are the first wild card in the West as it stands currently on the win in regulation tiebreak, plus some points as well. I can do a bit quick. I can do a quick overview. Spanish flu 1919, 1920, foot and mouth 2001, and Zika virus in 2016 for the Rio Olympics. They're the three big ones that have had an impact on sport. Yep. No, I've already seen at my local Wetherspoons in Bracknell. It has two bars in it, and the bottom bar, which is the smaller of the two bars, is only partially open due to staff shortages. I think that could kill the pub trade in this country. Again, 14th of April, I think it's optimistic to come back that soon. Look for the season to be done. I think 14th of April is far too optimistic for rugby union or rugby league to come back and play. I do. I think a month is not long enough. I think 14th of May is a little bit more doable. No, Bracknell was not a posh area. Not posh at all. Just because it's in the southeast does not mean it's a posh area. It is a dump. It's horrible around here. I was living in Maidenhead, or Taplow technically. That is posh. But no, there's some really scabby council estates and there's some drug problems and gang crime, just like the West Midlands. It doesn't matter where you live. You can have the posh streets, and yeah, I might live in the nice end of town. Wouldn't call it posh. My next 2 doors down, drug dealer. Across the road, convicted murderer. So it's not as posh. Buckinghamshire is full. I will admit that. I will admit that some of the house prices around where I was living until Saturday were in the £1 million plus range. Also full of drug dealing scum. Literally within a mile of where I was living, you had some of the most expensive houses in the county and one of the scummiest council estates in the county of where I was living in Buckinghamshire. Bracknell was exactly the same. Some of the biggest, most expensive properties within 5 miles and some of the worst council estates with high crime rates within 5 miles. It's a media perception that everyone who lives in the home counties is posh. It really isn't. Oh, I think the 14th of April is an optimistic return date for rugby union and rugby league. I think it's very, very optimistic. I think May is a better return date, I think, than April. I don't know. I do know that there was a bad flu season, I think about 16, 17, 18 years ago, and a Welsh rugby union player had flu and still decided to go to training and had a heart attack and died. No legal action was taken by the family. He went to training knowing he was ill. So if you know you're unwell and you go to work, it's on you when you should actually be at home resting and have a sick note. But in certain cases, it is down to the team. Go, look, you're unwell, you've got flu, you're on stand down. If the player wants to train in his own time at home or in isolation and keep active when they should be resting, and they have they make the illness worse or they do pass away, it's on the player. That'd be my viewpoint. You're taking a risk by training or working while still. Oh no, there's no way April 3rd we'll be back. No, not hoping now. 3 weeks not long enough. When other sources are saying 10 to 14 weeks before normality returns, that's too soon. Mm. The Italian Federation are saying that they want to complete their season before Euro 2020 even can kick off. And yes, games are being hosted in Italy. So yeah, no, Euro 2020 is not happening. Not at all. Italy has a big say with UEFA. As a federation, it can put a lot of pressure on UEFA, and there's no way Euro 2020 can take place when it's scheduled to. Not a hope in hell. Neither can the Olympic Games either. Not a hope in hell. For me, I would say about 8 to 14 weeks before we can see professional sport again. 8 to 14 weeks. That's my personal opinion. I think as a rough time frame. I would say May at the earliest, not April. May, because it's going to get worse before it gets better. I did get asked a question earlier. Oh, what's the worst time to have go? Oh no, it was a bad idea anyway. And UEFA have admitted that. Oh no, yeah. If rugby league run a club, be it the Australian and RFL, so the Australian Rugby League and Rugby Football League here, no clubs would be in administration trial. Absolutely. They could promote the promotion teams and avoid relegation and just expand the league, and then increase relegation the following season. That would be my solution. And the Premier League has been at 22 teams before in its early inception, so it's doable to restructure the leagues like they were in between 92 and 96. It's been proven to be doable, but we'll see what happens. But we will see what happens. I mean, Bournemouth and West Ham are calling for the season to be just done. But I think enough of the potential games have been played for the season to be declared. So in theory, Liverpool would still be champions. And West Ham would be safe, I think, on goal difference. I think Norwich, Bournemouth, and who else is it? I think it's Villa would go down. But it's one of them. Was it Watford? Or they could promote the top two teams from the Championship, and then the following season relegate 5 teams instead of 3. But that's an idea that's been floated, is expanding the Football League. So you add 2 teams to the Football League, which would be, I think, Barnet and, as it stands, it would be Barnet and another team from the National League. If the leagues avoid them, massive legal ramifications. Massive, I think, because of, more than 75% of the season has been played, they can say we're declaring the season now. But we shall see what happens. There's, I think, 5 or 6 options the FA can take, but again, it's we have to wait and see when it is safe to return to work in that sense. And at the moment, it's too early to tell. At the moment, this live stream is me eating Pringles. It's something like that. I think it's around 70 to 75% to avoid a void season or a restart of the season. I think there's a percentage of a season you have to complete where it's not voided, and there are massive financial and legal implications, whereby if they could expand the Premier League to 22 teams, they could expand the Championship, and League One and League Two, and they could rearrange the National League as well. At the moment, the NHL is looking for arena availability to the end of July, and reports coming out of US and Canada is a provisional return date sometime in the beginning to middle of June. So it looks like the NHL might go straight into playoffs, condense the playoffs. So instead of having a seven-game series, possibly having a 5 or 3 game series, and possibly playing playoff games in neutral venues, depending on what areas of the US and Canada are coronavirus free or under control, and still possibly playing without no fans. But these are provisional dates. I mean, the situation is very, very fluid at the moment. But we can see what happens. We have to wait and see what happens. I mean, Hoboken in New Jersey is under lockdown as a city. So the response in the US is different to the response elsewhere in the world because it's a federal. You've got federal government and you've got 50 states plus the District of Columbia plus the overseas territories. So the US response has been very ad hoc, and then you've got federal, state, and county or parish level. Because the can't you see when you bite on the Pringles, you could do it. Oh look, I'm hungry. Plus, he's been sat like in my house for like 2 days, so I'm hungry. But in all seriousness, jokes aside, yeah, the earliest the NHL can come back and the NBA is June, I would think. They're looking at availability into July. And you have to remember there's 31 teams in the NHL and 32 teams in the NBA. So that's a fair number of arenas, and not every team gets in the playoffs. So you're looking at possibly having the playoffs at neutral venues, possibly doing away with home and away, and playing a series of maybe one venue. They might go right. This is the building where this city or these cities are going to host the Stanley Cup. These cities are going to host the NBA championship playoffs. Let's get it done. They could condense the playoffs, or they could just they have basically said they want to complete. They want to award the championships. Now they've also played over 75% of their seasons. They've only got a few games. I think the NHL's got less than 10 games left for some teams. Other teams have less. There was only 3 weeks left of the season, so we shall see. We shall see what happens. I'm making enough of a mess with my bedroom floor. Oh, I've made a mess. I've got to hook all this up now. But the NBA were playing games until a Utah Jazz player tested positive. So the Columbus Blue Jackets and San Jose Sharks were resistant to playing games behind closed doors until Columbus were told you had no choice, you want to go ahead. And San Jose were then told they were going to have to play their next game behind closed doors, but then the league shut down. They wanted to go until the very end. I wouldn't say both codes of rugby would have to start their seasons again because rugby union is so close to the end of their season, but rugby league, absolutely, I think. I think yes, and I'm surprised. The military are getting involved with the US on a local level. They have shut down the city of Hoboken, New Jersey, which is a small city when it comes to cities in the US, but it is part of the Newark, New York metropolitan area. So if they're shutting down a city near New York, they could shut down New York, and I think the New York metropolitan area is like 25, 30 million people. That's not just New York City. That's a whole load of cities around New York. The Eastern Seaboard, that's like a third of the US population in New England and the Eastern Seaboard. To shut that down would cripple the US economy, cripple it, and lead to a global recession. Me eating Pringles is really popular. Oh, I'm wearing my new Dolphins top. My mate Jason from work gave me a 49ers and a Dolphins and NFL top. So I've got some more jerseys for the collection that I'll go through. Super Rugby shut down in the Southern Hemisphere. It is getting to the point where we are in unprecedented territory recently, but the other examples I can give of a sporting shutdown like this, oh no, it would fly in England. It would be either show me the way to Amarillo. I would walk 500 miles. I Want to Break Free by Queen, and the Venga Boys. It would happen. It would involve a couple of pissheads in a block of flats, but it would happen. It's just how they're passing the time. I wouldn't say all across China at 30%, but regionally in certain provinces it has dropped by a substantial amount in just 6 weeks. It has had a massive impact on the global economy. It will be felt, but it will rapidly pick up again. Yeah, the Venga bus is coming. I'm going to do sports history videos, and there are some other breaking sports stories. Yes, foot and mouth affected rugby union in 2001. Ireland was very badly affected, so they had to play some of all of Ireland's home games 6 months late in October and November, which affected the autumn internationals. The Zika virus had some impact on the preparations for the Rio Olympic Games recently, 4 years ago. I'm trying to think what else now. There have been some other health outbreaks that have affected sport. But the foot and mouth and Zika virus is the two that I can think of in recent years that have had an impact. Bird flu and swine flu and SARS and MERS, not so much. But, oh God, steps. Tragedy. I would think Run DMC might get a bit of play. Can't Touch This by MC Hammer. But I Want to Break Free by Queen might get sung at some point. That might be quite funny. But already done my all-time English football side. Already done my all-time English cricket side 2 years ago. So I've done football and cricket 2 years ago. They're on the playlists. Yellow Submarine that might that could do. But rugby union, I think I've done a rugby union 15. Not done a league yet. Oh yeah, I mean, on the gambling side of things, as I said, I've seen a lot of ads recently, and I've been bombarded for the last month, 2 months, and it's getting to me now. It's really pissing me off. I've written to YouTube saying, most players. Well, Justin Harris would make my British Lions 13 for league and my Northern Hemisphere 15 for Union. Justin Harris is dual code. Jonathan Davis wouldn't get that. That's the squeaky commentator, not the actual current player who's actually a decent human being. Jonathan, I'm a squeaky league union player. I get it. Well, I've discussed, is there still room for FA Cup replays? I think the League Cup is on its last legs now. I think this could kill it, personally. Right. I might have to do a rugby league fantasy team all time, or a team of the decade. But Justin Harris would get into both my union and league, fantasy teams. I would have to say, yeah, Justin Harris would, for me, have to get in there because he's a dual code international, and it's Justin Harris, and he's such a nice bloke. So I would have to get Justin Harris in there. Because of the money, because rugby union, rugby league are stupid. They're run by idiots. That's my personal opinion. I think the Italians and the Irish were very proactive in saying, look, we're not going to have games go ahead in the Six Nations. And then the Pro League, when Italy shut down, basically said, well, we cannot continue. And the Irish government said, no, we're shutting down all public gatherings. I'm surprised the British government hasn't followed suit. I am a little bit. I love Pringles. I love them. And there was some rugby union at the weekend, but rugby league, I'm really surprised they just carried on until literally the final minute. All-time rugby side, any country, any era. That's a bit of a problem because I can only comment on players that I've seen play. That's how I go with my my favourite starting lineups or favourite squads, favourite players. I have to have seen them play. And for me, you've got to have. You've got to look at it as I've seen these guys play. You know, I've watched their careers. It'll be near the end of their careers, it'll be in their careers, their whole careers. So for me, not only is it how they played, but how they were off the field. Not just their actions on the field. I mean, Adrian Morley would be my captain in a rugby league side. Adrian Morley would be the captain of any rugby league team I put up. And so there's some pretty beefy English forwards from the 90s and 2000s who would be subservient to Adrian Morley. Oh no, I can eat them raw. I eat Pringles raw. Don't need a dip. Dip is for the weak. And I will say this, I did meet the 97 All Blacks on their autumn tour. They used my school as a training facility. So I met a very, very young Joe Nalomi when he was 22. I'm not sure James Haskell is a prick. He would not make any of my starting 15s. I met James Haskell, absolute tit. But Joe Nalomi, I met him in 1997. Absolute gentle giant. Such a humble man. Yes, to paraphrase Otto from I Love It, that's a brilliant film. Absolutely brilliant film. A Fiscal Wonder. Brilliant film. So John Cleese at his nutty best. One of the funniest, most underrated films, cult classic in my view. Haskell's a muppet. He retired because of a foot injury, so he goes into sport. You got to kick people. Oh yeah, no. I've been very, very clear on when I've done my cricketing all time in English cricketing teams, football teams. I've looked at the players' off-field conduct as well as a role model for the sport, and yeah, a lot of players don't make my checklist. Diego Maradona does not make it into my fantasy 11 because he's an absolute knob. I think it's more the work ethic for me as well. If a player is talented but lazy, he doesn't get in. So Dimitar Berbatov, one of the best centre forwards for creativity, he's too lazy. Far too lazy a player. Brilliant player, but too lazy. This is why Pogba doesn't make any of my fantasy teams. Maradona's 5 foot. Was he 5'8"? I think he's 5'8". He's taller than you think, but he's short, powerful, and fast. No, Jason Gillespie, guess what? He makes my all-time cricketing side as well. And I misspelled his name. So when you go on my cricket playlist, you will see my all-time in English 11s, but all-time globally and all-time England. Jason Gillespie, look how I spell his surname and how badly I misspell it, and I carry on in one take, And then I realised as I'm writing his name wrong, I'm writing it wrong. And I carry on writing it wrong. I don't rub it out and go, I'm going to redo that. Look how I spell Jason Gillespie on my all-time cricketing 11 video on my cricket playlist, and you will piss yourself. I suggest you watch that video tonight. It's quite funny how badly I misspell his name, and then I carry on misspelling it, and then I know I've misspelt it, and I don't correct myself. Quite funny. Yep. Ryan Sidebottom. Funny nicknames in sport. You got Neil Razor Ruddock, football. Ryan Sidebottom in cricket is sexual chocolate. I've only got a few symbols left. So many questions coming in. But no, Jason Gillespie. Yes, I have seen the Pogba Facebook and tweet. I've shared it. It's quite funny. The Joe Marler one. Clearly, the citing commissioner doesn't have a sense of humour. The French Harous gets a 3-game ban for punching Richie in the face, although Richie was also cocking his arm, so there's some mitigating circumstance there. Joe Marler, though, has got a disciplinary record for before, so they look at your previous disciplinary record. But Alan Wynne Jones, I think Alan Wynne Jones, I'm surprised he hasn't got. No, Mark Henry also for sexual chocolate. The reason why I know that is I found when my mate was helping me move at the weekend, my mate Lewis, we're in his work van. I said, look in the glove compartment. Look in the glove compartment. And it's the WWF entrance music, volume 4. And you got The Rock, Test, Triple H, all the Mark Henry, sexual chocolate. Okay. But a friend, my mate Ian, asked me about WrestleMania. I said, well, who do you think so win? I'll ask if it takes place. Because sport or sports entertainment without fans is nothing. It doesn't work. So it'd be interesting to see if WrestleMania takes place as well. Jude Bellingham. I haven't heard much of Jude Bellingham, so I'm going to have to look into him. But it'd be interesting to see player movement in the off season because we might not have an off season. Yes, I was watching it live. Gareth Thomas was brilliant. He was so funny. Taking the piss out of his homosexuality. Gareth Thomas has got a very, very good sense of humour. As a player, I didn't like him. But as a pundit, as a commentator, he's very intelligent, also very, very witty. You see a different side of him now he's retired. And he's also a cross-code international playing League and Union. It is interesting with no fans because you can't hear what the coaches are saying, you can't hear what the refs are saying, and what the players. But the mics pick up all the foul language, all the swearing, and you're going to see how passionate coaches are getting and frustrated coaches are getting with their players when they're not doing what they're told. Cactus Jack, that takes me back a long time. I mean, oh God, Pringles are so addictive. I will say this about the whole. He's a 16. Oh yeah, no, I have heard that. Oh, I know what you're talking about. Some clubs are very interested in signing him, and big money. He's very young. Championship football is not the same as Bundesliga or Premier League, and I don't know what's going to happen with the summer transfer window with what's going on with the coronavirus. I honestly think we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how long the leagues are going to be shut down for. This will affect expiring contracts, contract renewals, transfers, loans. So it affects more than just the current season. It affects next season and the off season. and he is still very, very young. So it'll be interesting what happens. All right, I'll put them down now. I'll eat them all because I will eat them all. I would be very, very careful to put that much pressure on a young player, and we've seen it happen multiple times where players have been really well. I know I shouldn't, but I've only got crumbs left at the bottom. I've got to eat dinner yet as well. Well, I wouldn't say that clubs can't sign anybody because we've been here before where there have been transfer embargoes on teams, individual teams. I don't think that you can ban players from I don't think you can ban clubs from signing players, but it is going to have an impact on when the transfer window opens and player movement. Because we're seeing travel bans and travel lockdowns by countries, it's going to be interesting to see how they work their way around the current situation. But we'll see what happens. I mean, the only other major sports story I can think of right now is the Tyson Fury one, and that's really interesting. And that relates to his initial ban anyway. And I've read an article in the Daily Rag, as I call it, and this story's broken a couple of days ago. It's been rumbling on. It's a different distraction to have from coronavirus. This coronavirus, that is actually a really important point here on doping bans, doping investigations, the transparency of the system, and a whole host of things. And it is something to look at. Oh yeah, Mankind catches Jack and Dude Love. I mean, God, yes, he did. He got thrown out of the ring 3 times in a Royal Rumble in 1998. And Mick Foley is he is, even today. I've watched him on Stone Cold Steve Austin's live pod. They did a live podcast where they're actually not just recording a podcast in a studio. It was when I actually went out into Orlando, Florida, and Steve Austin, with permission of Vince McMahon, said, "Can I, have this on the WWE network?" And I went, "Yeah, okay, no swearing. If you do swear, we're going to have to censor it. So there's going to be a bit of a time delay." I was like, "Okay." And they were in Austin, Texas, where Mankind, Mick Foley, had helped scout Steve Austin back in 1988. And that was why it was held there. And it was actually a really interesting podcast interview. It was actually quite fun to watch Mick Foley and Stone Cold Steve Austin bounce off each other because they are very, very good friends. But no, Mick Foley, he was brilliant as Cactus Jack. He was brilliant as Mankind and Dave Love, and as Mick Foley himself. That's the 4 faces of Foley. On the Tyson Fury side of things, again, yes, these are allegations. UK anti-doping are investigating. The British Boxing Board of Classification are involved. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. But if he's found guilty of any offence, he faces up to 8-year ban. And that will be career over. Yes, I have seen Mankind and The Rock do This Is Your Life. It is very, very funny. Dwayne Johnson and Mick Foley are outside the ring. That's what you get. They are very, very similar to what you get in the ring with their personality. They're very, they are just funny. I think, on the Tyson Fury thing, again, the investigation has started. There was some undercover reporting done by the Rag on Sunday, as I call it, the Daily Rag on Sunday. Yes, that newspaper. I wouldn't say it's BS. I think there is a lot of possible evidence because it is concerning that even though he was banned for 2 years and served that ban and has come back and has done what he's done in the sport, it raises questions of the integrity of the system when it comes to doping bans and evidence and the integrity of the UK anti-doping system in place. It does raise integrity questions, and that's something you don't want. And while it's a negative story, I suppose, to do with sport, it is still something that isn't coronavirus related. This is dating back years to when they were investigating Tyson Fury over his doping problems. So it'll be interesting to see what the outcome is and how long the investigation lasts, and will they strip titles? Will he get a life ban? Will he get a lengthy ban? Will any action be taken at all? Will the allegations be proven to be false or true? It's going to be really, really, really interesting. I think it is strange for these alleged malpractice, so to speak, come forward now. It is interesting, considering he's just won a world title and beating Deontay Wilder. It is highly interesting, considering he's been booked for a fight against Joshua later in the year. I do find it interesting. I think the timing is a bit suspicious, considering what's going on with global sport right now. I think the media could be stirring something up, but I think there is some evidence there that there possibly was further wrongdoing. I think we'll have to see what the outcome is. Due process has to be done. I think the system has to be transparent. We have to have transparency. With the investigation and openness. I think that's something that occasionally in these types of investigations we lack, is that transparency and openness, and fans and people who wouldn't, the public not fully know what's going on. I think that's something that sport does lack a lot in governance, is transparency. And this may lead to changes in the anti-doping regulations that we have and the systems in place. Because many boxers have said, I'd rather, box against someone who's basically cheating in the sense of, not giving 110% to throw a match than someone on steroids. Because if you've got someone who is doping, in a contact sport like that, I've heard interviews, I've listened to interviews and read interviews where athletes and players in various sports have said, I'd much rather be spat at by a player, a bit ice hockey, rugby, or something like that, gouged in the eye, which is a pretty cheeky offence either, than play against someone or fight against someone who's, juiced to their eye. I'd rather have some dirty act of foul play against me than this guy come at me who's juiced his eyeballs, where he unintentionally. I mean, it's that kind of thing. When rugby players and hockey players, ice hockey, NFL, they've said, I'd much rather have someone come at me and underhand cheat, be it sleight of hand with the ball or on the than steroids. So we'll see what happens there. On Major League Baseball side of things with the Astros, that scandal still rumbles on. That things have gone very quiet on the Major League Baseball front because they've now delayed the start of their season. The coronavirus has come at the right time for Major League Baseball, because a lot of questions were being asked about the transparency of the system Major League Baseball had in regards to the punishments given out to the Astros organization and the fact that no players were punished. A lot of questions have been asked by a lot of baseball fans and the media about how Major League Baseball dealt with the Astros scandal, and are still dealing with the Astros scandal, because people are, East Germany at the Olympics. Christ, the women's swimming team is now the men's swimming team. It seems the East Germans is a prime example of state-sponsored doping. That was systemic for about 20 years. Very interesting documentary about DDP's rehab for Scott Hall, Jake Roberts. When they never had a man in the women's race. Samaya, the South African athlete, has got a naturally high testosterone level, which is rare. It's a rare condition that she has. But the way that the IOC and the IAAF have been, making her go through all these tests and jump all these hurdles, is wrong. I don't. It was like Oscar Pistorius when he ran on his blades in the Olympics. He's the first Paralympian to also compete at the Olympics. In the Olympics around wartime. Germany. Oh god, that's 1936. Be it Summer or Winter Olympics. I don't know actually. Is the answer to that one. Again, when it comes to sport, I focus on. I mean, I know a lot about the sport before I was born, but I tend to focus on sports history, predominantly from I would say the 70s, 80s onwards, is where I really devote a lot of my knowledge on sport. But I do, I've obviously done a bit of research and reading into sport prior to the decades before I was born. But I predominantly look at 1966 onwards when it comes to looking at sporting events. That's what I call the modern era of the sport we see today and the foundations we see today. I think you can class the early modern sporting era of the 60s, but it's an interesting point you raise when it comes to sports history. There was a British woman who said she trained all her life, got on the platform, and she knew she was getting a silver because the East German next to it, or because of drugs. It was skill. Yeah, they are retroactively awarding medals now to clean athletes. So the 1988 Olympic 100 meters final, only one athlete never had tested positive for doping, and that was the guy who finished last. They've retroactively awarded the gold medal to Carl Lewis and Linford Christie, and they were both implicated in drug scandals. The Brazilian man who finished last in the '88 Olympic final has now got the gold officially, because the other 8 athletes in that 100-meter final all failed dope tests within 6 years of that final. And I think they've ordered the men's bobsleigh team from Sochi. I think is it bronze or silver, because an athlete tested positive for a banned substance in the men's bobsleigh event. I think there was it a heptathlete or a hurdler got awarded a medal from the Rio Olympics, again because an athlete tested positive. And I think there's even been medals awarded from the London 2012 and what was before London and Beijing. They're awarding medals as far back as Beijing because athletes have failed dope tests in the last 12 years. I don't know about Athens, although there are rumours going around that medals will be re-awarded from the Athens Games as well. So, how far back do you go before you go, is this too far now? What's done is done. I mean, the further back you go, the more doping was prevalent. Athletics still has a problem. It's nowhere near as bad as what it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. How far back do you go retrospectively awarding medals and stripping medals? Because some of those who were competing at the time, who are now eligible, have since passed away. How far back do you go in the sporting history books to re-award medals and championships because of cheating? I mean, how far back do you go? There has to be a limit. We have to draw a line in the sand and move on. Otherwise, it becomes farcical. And the IOC, as an organisation, we know about all the issues with the IOC. Look at Salt Lake City, look at Nagano, and the issues around how they awarded Olympic Games to certain cities. I don't know why people are allowed to compete after a fail. Sport gives second chances. And there's always a right to appeal. I do scratch my head when an athlete fails a second or third time. When an athlete fails, like a Safa Power is one, he's failed twice, and he's won Olympic medals. I'm trying to think of some of the Americans. Tyson Gay, he's failed multiple times, yet he's still got medals. But again, retroactively stripping and re-awarding medals. I mean, how far back do you go before it's farcical now? We've mentioned the East German swim team. And we could mention like some of the Russian athletes, Chinese athletes, and American athletes. It's not just a Soviet bloc issue from the 80s. It's an ongoing thing that's been going on for years. Yeah, Justin Gatlin, Tyson Gay, Asafa Powell, the Beijing and London finals. Those athletes won medals in Beijing and London. Yet they, have failed between them. I think there's like I think how many medals are there between them? Between those three, they've won a lot of Olympic medals between them. And should the Jamaican relay medals be stripped because of Asafa Powell? This is where you get into clean athletes being tarnished on a winning team because of a dirty athlete. How far back do you go? Do you call it? I think there has to be a point where you draw a line in the sand and go, enough's enough. We move forward now, because it does get farcical after a while, and you have to think, is it actually worth the damage to the image of the sport constantly doing this? Yes, I agree in righting wrongs, but there's a point where you go, enough's enough. And cycling is another one where they stripped Floyd Landis of the Tour de France. They stripped Lance Armstrong of his Tour de France wins. If you look at the Lance Armstrong Tour de France wins, I think 1999, his first Tour de France win, out of the first 15 riders in that tour, I think only 3 have not returned positive tests for doping. And they retroactively awarded the Tour de France in 99 to Jan Ullrich, who then failed a dope test. So, again, how far back do you go? And also, the person you're rewarding it to, you have to then look at their dope history. Then it sets a precedent, and it becomes farcical. The 88 Olympic 100 final, need I say more? 8 out of 9 athletes in that final failed doping tests subsequently after that final in the decade following. The guy who finished last, bearing in mind, he wasn't like far behind. If you think about it in actual real time, he still set a national record at the time and one of the fastest times of all time that was clean that we know of. It's one of the fastest times of all time clean. Yet he finished last. That shows you how bad the doping was in 1988 in Seoul. I think a leaked report suggested 80% of the athletes in Seoul would fail dope tests now, because some of the supplements they're taking were legal then, not legal now. And it makes a mockery out of it. Justin Gatlin, yes, he did get a silver at the Worlds after failing 3 times. Tyson Gay has failed, I think, twice. Asafa Powell has failed twice. Between them, that's 7. Is that 7 or 8 failed dopes tests or something? How many medals have they won between them in relays and individual events? It is farcical that these guys are still allowed to compete, especially after 3 bans. I mean, it shows how toothless the IOC actually is when it comes, and the IAAF, for example, when it comes to lengthy bans for athletes, because they just keep reoffending. They keep reoffending some of these guys, and it is an embarrassment to the system, and it shows a failure of the system that we currently have in place. Absolutely, it shows a failure to the system. It shows the system doesn't work. It shows the system is still being abused and is not working for the athletes we're clean. I think even sometimes a second chance, it depends how. It's like Lance Armstrong spent the better part of a decade lying to investigators and hiding evidence from investigators, and he threw Floyd Landis under the bus because Landis wanted to speak out about the doping. And he destroyed Floyd Landis' career in a stroke because he was the one who testified against him, got him stripped. And then Floyd Landis really opened a can of worms. If Lance Armstrong said nothing about Floyd Landis, we would have never known about Lance Armstrong's doping, because as soon as Lance Armstrong threw Floyd Landis under the bus, Floyd Landis opened a whole can of worms on US Postal as a team, and that can of worms hasn't really been fully closed either, and it has absolutely tarnished cycling, I think, irreparably. And there's still doping in cycling, but they still haven't learned their lesson. And that's my personal opinion. I think cycling is a sport that I don't think can ever fully regain its image. I never understood cheats. When I won sports events, it was like, oh, good, no, I had never cheated anyway. It was like, I think you're going to get cheats, and then there's cheats. Um, there's cheating and there's cheating. I think there's trying to get a cheeky advantage in a team sport like football, rugby, or ice hockey, where you're pinching a little bit, you're slightly offside, and then there's outright individual or team doping when you are deliberately cheating to have a physical advantage when it should be a level playing field. Um, I don't know. We have to look at possibly changing the doping rules to having a look at the transparency, length of ban, live bans, all sorts. You just have to look at it. But there's diving, there's being slightly offside, there's that pulling back of the opponent's jersey, there's a bit of obstruction, like rugby or ice hockey or football, and then there's taking performance enhancers so you can run harder, play faster, play longer, expend more energy before you get tired. There is a way. There's taking a little embellishment or a bit of obstruction, blocking an opponent, and then there's outright cheating when it comes to boosting your performance artificially. And this goes back to the Tyson Fury situation. Tactical fouls, they happen. That's not cheating in my view. That's taking one for the team. You get it in every major team sport. Someone has to take that penalty for the team. I'm not a big fan of it, but I understand why that happens. That's nothing. Well, they're fouls, so they're against the rules. But every team sport, you're going to get that one guy who has to take one for the team. He's a guy who will take that necessary foul against, or that penalty against, because it stops the opposition scoring or getting an advantageous position on the pitch or on the ice to set up a scoring chance. But when players feign injury to get a player suspended or sent off or to gain an advantage that way, that's where I get frustrated with players faking they're injured and diving and simulating, conning the officials when there's no actual contact or they're pretending they're injured when they're not. It's seeping in out of football into rugby and ice hockey, and that's where I get really frustrated, is when it's corrupting other sports. That's where I get frustrated, when it starts affecting other sports which are normally played on the edge, 100% physical. They're knocking seven bells out of each other. That's when that's when I class feigning injury and diving and deliberately trying to get an opposition player punished as the same as doping, in the sense that it's not within the right frame. How do I put it? The right mindset. How do I put this? It goes against the moral code of the sport, and it does leave a bit of a bad taste. Oh yeah, the Olympics is very political. It's been used as a soft power tool by countries before. A lot of countries do put a lot of money into their state funding of their Olympic programs, tens of billions of dollars of tax. I use dollars because that's the denomination that we use when we talk about things like the Olympics, like global events. They use a lot of taxpayer money to build the arenas and stadiums. There's a big investment with taxpayer money when it comes to training facilities and grassroots development of the Olympic programs. I think yeah, the Olympics is a political event, in the sense there is a lot of politics involved, and the IOC is loves it. They love the attention they get. The Olympics and the coronavirus. We mentioned this at the beginning. I'm going to finish on this. With the coronavirus, we've gone full circle. I cannot see how the Olympics and Euro 2020 can take place this year with the effect that we've already seen globally on preparations and things. And 1984 Olympics as well in LA was quite political as well. And the Atlanta Games in '96, the Mexico Olympics in '68 were on the backdrop of political military unrest in Mexico. The 1978 World Cup in Argentina, Football World Cup. The '95 Rugby Union World Cup in South Africa was a positive political statement. But yeah, no, there's a lot of big major international sporting events that are very, very political with the links. But I personally think sports and politics should be very, very separate. But the Berlin Olympics in '36 was hijacked by, obviously, it was awarded before the Nazis came to power, but they used that as propaganda. Um, um, oh yeah, I mean the Chinese government have made it very clear they want to win a major international tournament such as football or rugby by 2050. I can't see it happening either because the domestic leagues in China are so corrupt. Um, it's such a corrupt system when it comes to professional sport in China. It's unreal. The '36 Olympics, as I say, is also very political. But no, the Chinese have spent trillions, not billions, trillions of dollars in developing sports programs for the last, I'd say, 20, 30 years to make sure China regularly comes near the top of the Olympic table in the top 3 countries every year. Um, they have got industrial training camps for Olympic sports. They have pumped billions, if not trillions, of US dollars into their sports programs that are state run. It's like a state factory line of youth talent where they basically it's like a factory, a sports factory. You just have to see how almost the military precision in which they run these sports colleges and sports programs that are government funded. It's chilling, actually, to say the least. It's very chilling, and yeah, they very very clear that they want to win football World Cup. Now they want to be competitive in the rugby union and rugby league World Cups. They basically said they're going to go for the big tournament. It's no, they think they should win stuff because of their population, but India, they're very good at cricket and field hockey because not only a big population, um, they they have very competitive domestic competitions in those sports, and they produce a lot of talent because there's great fan participation. They're easy sports just to pick up, and play. They're inexpensive sports to play, and the locals love them. China, it's different. They're going, right, we've been crap at sport for so long. Let's pump billions in and make ourselves the best in the world by throwing money at the problem and just churning out athletes. It is scary. You have to see the video footage. It's like watching a Soviet military parade in the '40s. It's just they're in sync. It is just mechanized production of mediocre talent because it's just a production line. There's no actual. They're just ingraining the basic skills, and it's just you're going to be doing. You're playing football. You're playing rugby. You're playing field hockey. You're playing. You're doing gymnastics. You're going into boxing. You're going into athletics, and they work out as a kid very young what you seem to enjoy the most, and they just shove you into a program and say, "What you are doing this." It is terrifying. Oh no, you got to have teams of multi backgrounds to be the most successful. It's mirror image of society. The multi ethnic, the multicultural, the multi background teams are not generally the best because they're a cross section of society, and fans buy into that. Right, I'm going to leave that there. We shall see what the coronavirus does to professional sport over the next 24, 48 hours. Now that rugby league has finally seen sense in this country, at least, we have some certainty. And I'll be interested to see what the NRL and AFL do going forward. I cannot see their seasons going unaffected. But there we go. I'm going to leave that there. Thanks for all the questions. I know I was munching on my original Pringles. because I was a bit peckish. But it's been really interesting to talk to you guys, and I shall have some more videos for you very, very soon. Keep your eyes open for some sports history stuff. And those who asked about some of the sports history videos I've done, check out my cricket, rugby union, and football playlists. You will find some of my all-time starting teams and world teams as well for national and international team selections. So there's some interesting selections in there. Some that might actually surprise you. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. Please place your thoughts below, and I'll have some more videos for you very, very soon.